Divorced people of Reddit, what ruined your marriage? It all started when I was working 2 jobs. My days were a blur of motion and exhaustion. I'd wake up early, head to my first job at the factory, where the clanging of machinery was my morning symphony. Then, after an 8-hour shift, I'd head to my second job at a local diner. The smell of grease and coffee kept me going as I flipped burgers and served up hot plates to the regulars. This was my life, a relentless grind, but I did it for us, for her. Wifey, on the other hand, was different. She rarely held down a job for long. When she did work, it wasn't uncommon for her to call out sick because she felt tired. Must be nice, I often thought, to just bow out when things got tough. Her jobs never offered sick time, so whenever she called out, we'd lose money. But I loved her, so I kept pushing, kept working harder to make ends meet. We were also constantly supporting her family. A real bunch of deadbeats, if I'm being honest. They never seemed to have their act together, always needing some. A loan here, a little help there. It added up, putting more pressure on our finances. I accumulated a mountain of debt, but what choice did I have? I was determined to be the provider, to keep us afloat no matter what. Then there were the medical issues. It started with her back problems. We went from doctor to doctor, seeking answers, relief. She was in pain, and seeing her suffer was a different kind of torture. Eventually, we tried to have a child. We visited fertility doctors, endured countless tests, but it just wasn't in the cards for us. We gave up after a while, defeated and heart. Our main joy came from gaming together. We spent hours lost in virtual worlds, escaping our reality. It was our thing, our way of connecting. We'd also travel to see her family off. She avoided my family like the plague, always saying they didn't like her. Maybe they didn't, but only because she kept flaking on family functions. When she bailed, so did I. It created a rift, a gap that grew wider with every missed holiday and birth. The breaking point came when she asked me if she could go on a trip with her friends to Maine. It was out of the blue, but I didn't see any harm in it. I told her she didn't need my permission, that I trusted her implicitly. But something in her eyes that day, a spark of excitement mixed with something I couldn't quite place, made me uneasy. So there I was, working overtime and night shifts, practically living at the factory. My hands were calloused, my eyes perpetually bloodshot. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. I dragged myself home, barely able to keep my eyes open, only to find her lounging on the couch, lost in a game or chatting with her family online. One particularly grueling night, I came home to find her packing. She was humming to herself, a carefree tune that grated on my nerves. I watched her for a moment, feeling a mix of love and frustration. She looked up, saw me standing there, and smiled. "Hey, babe," she said, her voice light. "I'm just getting ready for the trip. I'll be gone for a week." A week. It sounded like a vacation, something luxurious and unattainable in my world of constant work. I forced a smile and nodded, masking the tiredness that had become a part of me. "Have fun," I replied, my voice rough from exhaustion. As she left, a part of me wondered if she'd come back. Not physically, but emotionally. Was this trip a way to escape our reality? I shook off the thought, telling myself that I was being paranoid. The days dragged on, each one blending into the next. I worked, I slept, and I worked some more. Her absence was a constant weight, but I kept pushing, kept grinding. It was what I knew, what I was good at. One night, while I was at the diner, flipping burgers like usual, my phone buzzed. It was a message from her. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened it, my heart pounding for reasons I couldn't explain. "Having a great time here. Miss you." I stared at the message, feeling a pang of something I couldn't quite identify. I typed out a quick reply, telling her I missed her too, then shoved the phone back in my pocket. The night went on, busy as ever, but her message lingered in my mind. When she finally came back, things were different. She seemed distant, preoccupied. I tried to talk to her, to find out what was on her mind, but she brushed me off, said she was just tired from the trip. I let it go, telling myself that she just needed some time to readjust. But the distance between us grew. We still gamed together, but it wasn't the same. The laughter, the connection, it felt forced, strained. I didn't know how to fix it, how to bridge the gap that had formed. And then one night, she dropped the bombshell. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. I looked up from my game, my heart sinking. Her eyes were filled with a mix of guilt and determination. I knew in that moment that our lives were about to change forever. The night she told me she needed to talk, I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. I paused my game and looked at her, my heart pounding in my chest. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She took a deep breath, her eyes not meeting mine. "There's something I need to tell you," she began, her voice shaky. "While I was on the trip, I met up with someone. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "A guy we game with," she admitted. "We hooked up." The world seemed to stop. My mind raced, trying to piece everything together. The trip, the distance, the messages. I realized the smartwatch she left at home had been buzzing non-stop with texts from. At the time, I thought they were messages from her friends, something innocent. I was even planning on making a cute little phone call to her later, joking about how I knew what she was up to. But the truth was far from cute. I remembered seeing the heart emojis from the guy I knew. It all made sense now, the pieces clicking into place like a cruel puzzle. I didn't say anything for a long time, the silence stretching between us. She looked at me, her eyes filled with guilt and something else, maybe regret. "Why?" I finally managed to ask, my voice breaking. "I don't know," she said, tears streaming down her face. "It just happened. We were talking, and one thing led to another." I didn't want to hear the details. It was too much to process. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and overwhelming sadness. After that night, I tried to salvage what was left of our relationship. I suggested therapy, hoping it could help us find a way back to each other. She agreed, and we started seeing a therapist. But even in therapy, she couldn't stop talking about the other guy. He was always in the mix, always a part of the conversation. The therapist suggested that she stop talking to him to focus on us. Her response was like a dagger to my heart. "That's not fair to him," she said, her voice firm. That's when I knew it was over. It didn't matter how hard I tried, how much I wanted to save our marriage. She had strong feelings for, and nothing was going to change that. I began the painful process of disconnecting my emotions from her, the woman I had loved and supported for 13 years. It was like tearing out a part of myself, but I knew it had to be done. Over the next 2 years, I worked on moving on. It wasn't easy, carrying the debt from our relationship, but at least I wasn't paying alimony. I focused on rebuilding my life, piece by piece. The nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, memories flooding my mind, the laughter we shared, the dreams we had, all tainted by the betrayal. But slowly, I started to heal. I found solace in small things, moments of peace that reminded me life goes on. I took on extra shifts, threw myself into work. It was exhausting, but it kept my mind occupied. I even started reconnecting with my family, mending the relationships that had been strained by years of missed functions and broken promises. Gaming was different now. The joy I once found in it was overshadowed by the memories of what had happened. But I didn't give it up completely. It was a part of me, a way to escape, even if just for a little while. Looking back, I'd call the divorce a death by 1,000 cuts. It wasn't any one massive event that made her leave, but rather the accumulation of daily stresses and responsibilities that she couldn't handle. It was the small things, the relentless pressure of growing up that she struggled with. Honestly, she just couldn't hack it. Good luck to the other guy. She's his problem now. I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of relief. Let him deal with her whims and flakiness, her tendency to bail when things got tough. Maybe he'd learn what it meant to shoulder the burdens she conveniently ignored. But in the midst of all this turmoil, I did get something that truly mattered to me. The dog. She claimed to love our pup, but loving an animal goes beyond cuddling on the couch. It means feeding, cleaning up after, taking responsibility. That all fell on me. She'd let the dog out to run around, sure, but that was about the extent of her contribution. I remember the day I brought our dog home. He was a tiny ball of fur, all big eyes and wagging tail. It was my idea. A way to bring some joy into our lives, to have something we could share and care for together. Initially, she was thrilled. She loved the idea of having a dog, loved the attention he brought when we took him out for walks. But the novelty wore off quickly. I'd wake up early to feed him, take him out for walks before my shifts. She'd still be in bed, asleep or pretending. I didn't mind at first. It felt good to have that quiet time in the morning, just me and the dog. But as time went on, her lack of involvement became another strain on our relationship. Cleaning up after him, taking him to the vet, making sure he had everything he needed. It was all on me. She'd cuddle with him, post pictures of them together online, but the real work, the day-to-day responsibilities, that was my burden. One night, after another exhausting shift, I came home to find that she'd let the dog out, but hadn't bothered to check if he'd come back in. I found him shivering on the porch, looking up at me with those big, trusting eyes. My heart broke a little more that night. When we decided to split, she didn't even fight for him. It was as if she knew she wasn't capable of taking care of him. So I kept the dog. He was my solace, my constant companion through the chaos. The divorce process itself was grueling. It dragged on, each step feeling like another cut, another reminder of how things had fallen apart. We had to sort through our finances, untangle our lives, decide who got what. It was draining, emotionally and financially. Every time we met with the lawyers, it felt like a little piece of my soul was being chipped away. But having the dog made it bearable on days when it felt like too much. He was there, a reminder that there was still goodness in my life. We'd go for long walks, just the two of us, and for a while, the weight of everything else would lift. One particular evening stands out. The divorce proceedings had been especially brutal that day. Accusations flew back and forth, petty arguments over who deserved what. I came home feeling utterly defeated. As I sank into the couch, the dog jumped up beside me, resting his head on my lap. In that moment, I realized that while I had lost so much, I still had him. His loyalty, his unconditional love, it was a beacon of light in an otherwise dark time. Friends and family had their opinions, of course. Some were supportive, others judgmental. My parents were especially disappointed. They had never fully accepted her, and now they felt vindicated in their skepticism. It was hard to face them, knowing that they had been right all along, but their support was unwavering. They helped me pick up the pieces, encouraged me to move forward. The first year after the split was the hardest. I had to rebuild my life from the ground up. Financially, I was in a rough spot, carrying the debt from our marriage. I took on extra shifts, worked myself to the bone, but it was worth it. Each paycheck was a step toward independence, a step toward reclaiming my life. Emotionally, it was a roller coaster. There were days when the loneliness was overwhelming, when the memories of what once was haunted, but there were also moments of clarity. Moments when I could see a future beyond the pain. I reconnected with old friends, found joy in small things, started to dream again. The dog was my rock through it all. His presence was a constant reminder that life goes on, that there is always something to be grateful for. We developed new routines, new rituals. Every morning we'd go for a run, clearing my mind and starting the day with a sense of purpose. Every evening we'd settle on the couch, his head on my lap, a silent comfort. Now, 2 years later, I'm finally moving on. The debt is still there, a lingering reminder of the past, but I'm chipping away. More importantly, I'm finding myself again. I'm learning to live for me, to find joy in my own company. I've even started dating again, cautiously dipping my toes back into the world of relationships. It's scary, the thought of opening up to someone new, but it's also exciting. Each date is a reminder that there is still hope, that love is still possible. As for her, I don't know what she's up to, and I don't really care. She made her choices, and I made mine. Our paths have diverged, and that's okay. Life is too short to dwell on the past, to let old wounds fester. I'm looking forward now, embracing the possibilities that lie ahead. And through it all, I have my dog by my side. He's seen me at my lowest, been there through the darkest times, and now he's here as I step into the light. Together, we're moving forward, one day at a time, one step at a time. And for the first time in a long time, I feel hope. Life goes on, and so do we.